So welcome to the Demonstration Grants for Indian Children Native Youth Community Projects, also commonly referred to as NYCP, new grantee orientation. And congratulations on all of your hard work on your proposal and now your award as a new fiscal year 2022 NYCP grantee. So you can give yourself a pat on the back, a round of applause. Congratulate yourselves in the chat. We are very excited for all 43 of you to be joining us in this new cohort over the next few years. So as we get started today, you'll get used to every one of our events starting with this disclaimer. This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred. And now that you're officially disclaimed, we can really jump in. So today we want to give you a little bit of an overview of the NYCP program and all of your fellow grantees. Talk a bit about your grant award notification, also referred to as your GAN, and tips about upcoming reporting. And then we'll dive just a bit into fiscal management because we're really going to dive into that tomorrow. And then we'll wrap up with some information about communication and technical assistance that's available. On the housekeeping end, as we go throughout today, if you have questions, we want to answer them. We really want this to be an open forum for you as well. So please, as we're going, pop those questions over into the chat. And then as we go, we'll address those. And then we'll have some time when you can hopefully unmute and ask as well. If you happen to have any technical difficulties while you're going today, you'll see that we have on two other members of our technical assistance team, Olani and Patty. And you'll note that their names here start with OIETA, so you can find them. If you message them, they can help you with any technical issues that you might be having. If you get disconnected for any reason, you can email us at oie@seiservices.com and we can help you get reconnected. And I see the initial question that always comes up of, will this presentation be shared afterwards? Yes, we will share the slide deck with you, and then we will also share the recording. So that will be up on the OIE website for you to be able to watch over and over and share with your team. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Office of Indian Education's Director, Julian Guerrero Jr., to welcome all of you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody joining us virtually. And just real briefly in my native language, ha maraoeka. Nananiat sa yani suara soka ninai na kimar na namanat sa kerchina das kozadna das coffeena das ihedina. My name is Julian Guerrero, and I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the Director of the Office of Indian Education here at the U.S. Department of Education. I work with a very strong and dedicated team of education workers and caretakers and just passionate advocates for strong community change. I see online with us is group leader Dr. Donna Sabas-Burns, as well as Education Program Specialist Program Officer Donna Bussell, our OIETA contractors, and the list goes on and on. I wanted to join today's meeting with a very short message, and I don't want to take up too much time, but the journey, and first of all, congratulations, but the journey that you're about to embark on, some of you may have already done a journey similar to this. You may have won an OIE NYCP grant before, and for those of you who are in that bucket, congratulations, welcome back. For those of you who are new grantees who have never worked with the OIE, very excited to welcome you into what I like to call the OIE family. There's a few things that I want to kind of set the tone for in terms of what this program dreams and envisions to do. Whether or not you are very familiar with your own project objectives, your scope of what you propose in your applications, I encourage you to make sure you hold very tight and very close to you your proposals that were successfully funded, as those will be your guiding light to make sure that you implement with fidelity, because every single one of our Native relatives depend on this program, your programs, to be successful. We want to encourage and support continued community-led comprehensive projects that help American Indian Alaska Native children to become college and career ready. We know that. We really need to push that this is a grant for community efforts, breaking down those barriers, making those cold calls, showing up in spaces where typically it's not conventional to show up in, but you do it with goodwill. And making sure our students are receiving their cultural histories, getting exposed to their languages, getting exposed to the good work that you've proposed in your project objectives, and really build a world for them that they can realize that the sky's the limit, that they're destined for doing great things for their tribal nations. This grant should be to help utilize sustainability approaches and techniques that help continue to create meaningful policy change, as well as other changes in developing curricula and/or developing connections and relationships and fostering, all centered around ensuring that our Native students are prepared for their individual future. Whether it be the future as a whole or a future individually, we cannot stop focusing on what's at hand here. And maybe perhaps also continue to make sure that we're not having a deficit approach to our work. There's tons of reasons to despair and not many to think positively. So I challenge all of us, challenge all of you through your projects to think positively about how you're going to foster a community of collaboration more than competition, a community that's about connections and less about divisions, a community that's about the individual Native child, instead of forgetting that their future is at stake. These are things I will not relinquish on. I keep very close mind, and my team knows I pay attention to attendance. I pay attention to how you're implementing your grants. And please, I encourage you, don't ever be afraid to ask us for assistance, guidance, support, networking, resources. That's what we specialize in the OIE, is getting you connected to resources that will propel you to be even more successful. I like to say, and for those of you returning applicants and awardees, that your success as a project is our success as a program office. OIE is only as strong as your success. So when we have success among all our projects, those stories help equip us at OIE with the ability to have stronger talking points with my supervisors here at the department. All in all, this is for our Native children. And all in all, I really appreciate your time and attendance. Please always encourage not just yourselves, but your teams, your staff to attend technical assistance opportunities, to watch and rewatch technical assistance webinars and recordings, because we truly are well intended to make sure that we give you as much assistance in the forefront to avoid all the difficulties and stress that come with managing money and managing projects at the tail end when you're doing your mid-year self-assessments as well as your annual performance reports. It is a stressful journey, but I will let you know that you won't be alone, because we'll be with you. So I really appreciate everyone's time and dedication. And again, congratulations. I will hand it over to the next speaker. Thank you so much. Saku Kamiya. Go in a good way.
Thank you, Julian. So I think it's only right we go from there to actually meeting the rest of the OIE team. You'll see and get to meet momentarily the discretionary group leader, Dr. Donna Savis-Burns, and the 3 program officers currently, Donna Bussell, who is your program officer, Bianca Williams, and Angela Hernandez. And then there is also the formula side of OIE, led by Dr. Crystal Moore, and their program officers, Annabelle Toledo, Wanda Lee, and Gregory Hensley. You also have, that you'll be interacting with throughout the life of your grant, the OIE Technical Assistance Team. So on with us today, first of all, I'm Sarah Brightwell. You'll see me on lots of events. I know many of you from previous OIE grants that you have had, and then definitely some fresh faces as well. But we also have on with us today, Olani Lilly, one of our TA coaches, and Patty Furlano, another of our TA coaches, and Marissa Spang. So you'll get to meet lots of the TA team as we go across the various events this year. But I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Donna Savis-Burns to welcome you as well.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and congratulations again to all of you for becoming, as Julian said, part of our family. We are always excited whenever we have competitions, because that means new projects, new services, new great things, and more great things being done out in Indian country for our children. NYCP, parallel to our professional development program, is one of our largest and longest running programs within OIE. And it's that for a reason. This is a phenomenal program. Back in 2004, I worked on the NYC program myself and loved it, and came back to the department and just excited to see how far and wide we have grown. And with that, looking at the applications, looking at the program performance measures, and all the great things that you're all looking forward to doing, because we did screen all of them. I'm so excited to see what happens and how it's all going to work, because I know it's going to be great. And so I won't take any more of your time, but I just wanted to come on and say hello, welcome, congratulations, and we really do look forward to working with each and every one of you. Thank you.
And then that leads us to Donna Bussell, your program officer.
Hello, welcome everybody. Congratulations. I'm excited to be able to start this NYCP program from the beginning with you all. And I'm planning on being here to the end of this program with you all. I read all of your applications, and I'm really ready to get started and help you all get started and go forward. You know, our job here is to make sure, like Julian said, you are successful. So that's what I'm hoping for. I hope you all show up to all of our talking stick sessions, all of our monthly office hours. Those are so important. I cannot stress that enough, how important those are, to be there, every single one of those. For those of you who don't know me, I am a former teacher from Oklahoma. I taught for 11 years, everything from Head Start to a little bit of college. I am a citizen of the Apache Tribe of Oklahoma. I'm also Comanche from the Comanche Nation of Oklahoma, and Caddo from, of course, Caddo Nation of Oklahoma. So I grew up very in my traditional household with my grandfather and grandmother, and I've been working in Indian country my whole life. So being an educator in Indian country and an advocate, and now up here at OIE, I am so blessed to be able to help you all. And anytime you have a question about anything, please email me. I'm always ready to, I'm here to help answer any question I can. And if I can't find the help, I always have Miss Donna Savis-Burns and the OIETA team to help me out. And of course, Julian and our whole team up here at OIE to help me to help you out. So congratulations, and thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Donna. So now we'll leap into a little bit of our actual content for today. by talking a bit more about what the NYCP program is that you are now part of. So NYCP is part of the demonstration grants for Indian children, often referred to as demo grants. And the purpose of those are to provide financial assistance to projects that develop, test, and demonstrate the effectiveness of services and programs to improve the educational opportunities and achievement of Indian students in preschool, elementary, and secondary schools. So all of you are demo grantees, but within that, NYCP, the Native Youth Community Projects, is the absolute priority that you're part of. And so typically we just refer to you as NYCP grantees because there are other priorities under demo. So like there are ACE grantees, accessing choices in education, that are also demo grantees, but they're under a different priority. And so their grant projects look quite different than yours. So if you hear demo or NYCP, those are you. But in particular, know that you are fiscal year 2022 NYCP grantees. And that's also important because often when you're registering for events at OIE, we'll ask you to denote what grant program you're part of. So it's good to know that you are fiscal year 2022 NYCP grantees. Now that priority, that NYCP priority, was specifically to support community-led comprehensive projects that help American Indian and Alaska Native children become college and career ready. And that was really always the focus for NYCP, or college and career ready youth. It's also designed to help communities improve educational outcomes of their Native youth, specifically that college and career readiness, through strategies that are tailored to address the specific challenges and build upon specific opportunities and culture within your community. And that can include anything from supplemental academic programs or courses to social emotional services, cultural education, and then other support services. When we look across all of your different projects, and we'll spend some time in other events really doing that, there are a myriad of other services that each of you have proposed to do that meet the needs of your students and families. Now, this particular competition contained one absolute priority, which is that NYCP priority, and then 3 competitive preference priorities, which were for tribal lead applicants, tribal partnership, and promoting equity and student access to educational resources and opportunities. So let's kind of look at each of those pieces that some of you may have in common and some of you all have in common. So everybody had to meet the absolute priority, which means that you are focused on a defined local geographic area. That's also important because if at any point you determine that you would like to change that local geographic area, you cannot do that without reaching out to your program officer, Donna Bussell, to discuss that and get approval, because you are competitively awarded based on the local geographic area that you said that you were going to serve. It's centered on the goal of ensuring that Indian students are prepared for college and careers. So that's something that all of you have in common, that the different services that you're implementing are kind of focused on that college career piece. And it's to be informed by evidence, which could be a needs assessment that was from the last 3 years, or some other form of data analysis that looked at the greatest barriers, both in and out of school, to the readiness of local Indian students for college and careers, that looked at opportunities in your community to support Indian students, and that looked at existing local policies, programs, practices, service providers, and funding sources. Each of your projects also had to be focused on one or more barriers or opportunities, then matched with a community-based strategy or strategies and measurable objectives. And we'll definitely, in your upcoming talking circle, be diving into that concept of measurable objectives. All of your projects were designed and implemented through a partnership of various entities. Okay, so it had to include one or more tribes or tribal education agencies, and one or more BIE funded schools or local education agencies. So either a BIE funded school or an LEA, or a multitude of those, or both. It can also include other optional entities, so community-based organizations, national nonprofits, Alaska regional corporations, but at minimum, it had to include those first 2. And it had to be led by an entity that's eligible for a demo grant and that demonstrates or partners with an entity that demonstrates the capacity to improve outcomes that are relevant to the project focus through experience with programs funded through other sources. So kind of a promise of success there. Now, as we look at your competitive priorities, a key priority of ED is to promote equity in student access to educational resources and opportunities. And in particular, this was part of the Secretary's priorities. And so this competition had a competitive preference priority to encourage projects that bridged that purpose of NYCP for college and career readiness with the Secretary's supplemental priority to promote equity and student access to educational resources and opportunities by supporting community-led projects that engage school-age children in career exploration activities. And it also had an emphasis on learning about the teaching profession. So another thing that we'll be doing is you'll see that number 39 on the slide here is how many of you actually addressed this competitive priority and therefore received those competitive priority points. So out of 43 new grantees, 39 of you addressed this equity priority. So one of the things that we'll look at upcoming, not in this particular orientation, but in upcoming webinars with you, are how all of you plan to address that and ways that may be similar or different across grantees. It's always great to know what others are doing and how that's working. So speaking of those fellow grantees, I want to share a bit more about your new NYCP peers. So you can see across the last few cohorts, the different awards made. So the last NYCP award was made in fiscal year 2018 to 37 grantees for a total of $27.2 million. That grant cycle just wrapped up or is wrapping up this week on September 30th. Now, a number of those grantees will be on no-cost extension, and you'll still be interacting with them in events because they'll be around on that no-cost extension. We also have our fiscal year 20, they're demo grantees, but they were under that ACE priority. There were 40 of those. But in your cohort of fiscal year 2022 NYCP grantees, there are 43 of you for a total of $20.5 million. And then here's this list. Remember, I'm going to send you out the slide deck. I know that's a lot of names on a slide. You can try to find yourself on there, see if anyone else you know is on there. You're going to be getting to know these other 42 individuals, with yourself 43, a lot better over the coming months. We really want to encourage that peer-to-peer networking as well. It can be very helpful as you're launching your new project. And it's also nice sometimes to see where all of those are, because you may be looking at that list and thinking, I have no idea where some of those places are. So you can see here, we've kind of plotted out with our little red dots where all of your fellow grantees are. And you can see we're spread everywhere from Virginia to California. We have a number of grantees up in Alaska, I believe 10 Alaskan grantees. And anything from as far north as Alaska or in the continental US, North Dakota, all the way down to Texas. So a really diverse array of grantees in your cohort. All right, now pause here just to see if we have any questions thus far. I don't see any in the chat, but do remember as we're going through, if you have questions, please feel free to pop those over there. All right, let's dig into your GAN. This is your grant award notification. We're always going to be referring to it as your GAN. So whenever you hear GAN, this is what we're talking about. You can only pull it down out of G5. It's not something that's mailed to you. It's not something that's emailed to you. It is only available through that G5 system. And your project director is the one who can pull that down. So if you yourself are not the project director of record, then you'll need to get that from that project director, which brings up a good point. If you're not sure who your project director is, look on your proposal. Whoever it says on that proposal is who is currently the project director of record. And you'll notice that's who's on your GAN once you pull that down. That might be the wrong person. You wrote this grant a while back. You may have had changes in staffing. That may have just been a placeholder for someone who was going to be hired. You may have changes in that. Please know that when there are changes in that, you will need to submit that to OIE, and we're going to go over exactly how you do that. But if you're sitting here thinking, the person we said was project director isn't even here, don't worry, I'm going to walk you through how you can get that all fixed up. So when you're looking at your GAN, there's a couple of different pieces and parts to it. And it can look like, oh, it's just a bunch of legalese. I don't need to read this. However, it does contain a good bit of legalese, but you do need to read it. And so if you kind of know what you're looking for, it can help. When you look in block 1, you're going to see recipient name. That's your official grant awardee. Sometimes it's a rather formal or awkward version of your organization name. So sometimes it'll be made out to your superintendent of schools or to your school board, and that's not how you would normally refer to yourself. But that's the official awardee of your grant, as well as the official contact information. When you move over to block 2, this tells you your PR award number, which is very important. That PR award number basically codes back to your project and your grant. And so anytime you're sending in communication to the department, you'll want to include that PR award number. So definitely write that down somewhere, stick it on a sticky on your desk so you can keep track of it. It's also whenever you do reporting, whenever you do budget revisions, anything really that you turn into the department is going to need to have that PR award number on it. And then it also has your action number. So like this is your first GAN, so it's action 1. Action type is that it's a new award. An award type, it's a discretionary grant, which basically means it was competitively awarded. When you look at project or block 3, excuse me, that's your project staff. That's where it's going to tell you who your current project director is. And it's going to have their name, their contact information. It's going to give you the contact information for your program officer, which is Donna Bussell. And then it's going to give you the contact information for G5, which is always helpful because if you haven't used G5 before, sometimes it fights back. So you may find that you need to reach out to the help desk every once in a while for G5. In block 4, it's the title of your project. So in each of your grant applications, someone, a grant writer or maybe yourself, gave your project a title, and that's where that's listed. And then in block 5 is your key personnel, which often is just your project director. But what's important to note here is the level of effort. So for instance, in our example, it says the level of effort for the project director is 75%, which means that 75% of that person's time should be spent solely on the NYCP project. If that changes, if maybe you put it at 100% and now that person's going to be part-time, or maybe they were part-time and now you realize they should be a full-time person, those are all things that you will need to send in to Donna Bussell to get updated. Also remember that if you have multiple OIE grants, that cannot total more than 100%. You may truly be working 150%. However, it can't total more than 100%. So let's say you have 3 different OIE grants. You can be 20% on one, 40% on one, and 40% on another. You can't be 40% across all 3 because that would put you at 120%. The math doesn't quite work out there. So really be cognizant that if you're listed as project director for multiple grants, you can only grand total yourself to 100%. All right, let's head over and talk a little bit more about that project director piece, because I know a lot of you are going to be in this boat. If that project director has changed, the other thing you really have to keep in mind is that Donna Bussell, as your official OIE project program officer, can only talk to the project director. She can't communicate with your program manager or your budget manager or your lead instructor. She has to communicate with your project director. So if that person is not correct, then you're reaching out and she can't really engage in conversation about your grant with you. because she needs it to be with your project director. And that's a big reason why it's so vital that you keep that updated. Okay, so anytime that you need to change who that person is or any contact information for them or their level of effort, you have to get in contact with Donna Bussell to make those changes. And here's what she will need. Okay, you need to get a letter on program letterhead. It has to be signed by your authorized representative, which is typically going to be either your tribal chairperson, your superintendent, it might be the executive director. Those types of roles tend to be your authorized rep. If you're not sure who it is, feel free to reach out and we can help you figure that out. But we will need that person's name, address, phone, fax, email, and level of effort. You have to include their resume and when that change will take effect. So when will they become the project director? And that signed letter has to be sent over to Donna Bussell. And that's how you make that change official. Questions on that? Because that's when the question comes up a lot and it's super important. Okay, so everybody knows how to change their project director. Then we can go to the next part of your GAN. So now we're getting into the money part. In block 6, we're going to be able to see how much we were awarded and what our budget periods are. Now, if you've been a grantee before, often the grant is awarded and the year is October 1st to September 30th. However, your grant has a slightly different year. And so it's important for you to denote that. Your grant year began September 21st, which means it will end September 22nd, 2023. So year 1 of your grant goes September 21st, 2022 to September 22nd, 2023. And that will be your grant year throughout the life of your grant. You'll be able to see in that block 6 how much you have been tentatively awarded for all 5 years. And I say that because that is subject to change based on funding availability and your performance. But you can see there each year and how much you're getting this year. Super important to look at that because your proposal, you may have asked for $200,000, but based on your award and looking at your budget, maybe you were only awarded $195,000. Not a huge difference, but it does impact your budget and you need to be able to account for that. So make sure you're checking block 6 and 7 to see exactly how much you were awarded for year 1 and subsequent years. Then we'll look at block 8. This is where you'll find your UEI, which is another identification number for you as an entity. And then it will also show you there what all attachments are part of your GAN. So you can be on the lookout for all of those. In block 8, you get more of that information, just that same info there. Block 8 just will not go away, it just keeps coming. There we go. Really driving home block 8 info for you. Block 9 is our legislative and fiscal data. So as we look here, the most important part for you to look at is to know that you are an NYCP project and your award amount again. So you can see exactly how much you were awarded. Then when we get to block 10, this is one that's going to definitely vary grantee to grantee. These are your terms and conditions. So depending upon your entity and your project, you may have different terms and conditions than another. This is where it will tell you what type of indirect cost you are allowed to use and the indirect cost rate. So how much you're able to claim on indirect cost. Now, this may differ. So when you applied, you might have applied under an indirect cost rate that has since expired. And now you may have a different indirect cost rate. That's fine. we'll go over how you can update that information as well, because I know those have a tendency to change, and you can update that information. One note, we're going to make a tweak. So let me go back and show you where we're going to make a little edit. So here where we were saying that you were going to have a grant year of 9/21, that is actually when you received your GAN. So yours should actually here, instead of saying 9/21, it should say 10/1. So you will be on the standard grant year of October 1st to September 30th, which is good, makes it much easier. Okay, and I'm gonna pop that over in the chat as a correction. And in the slide deck that we send out to you afterwards, we'll have that corrected for you. So correction that your grant year is 10/1 to 9/30. All right. So let's go back over and look at some of your grant conditions again. So one of them is, I know a number of you have more than one OIE grant. That's great. But that means that you will need to submit a coordination plan. This is basically just a plan explaining how you're going to ensure that your NYCP funds are not going to be used for any activities of those other grants, and those other grant funds aren't going to be used to fund any of your NYCP activities, and how you're going to keep that straight. Okay, how are you going to coordinate all those activities and those funds? It will also need to include a timeline for your project. So how, again, you're going to keep those two separate across the year. That is going to be due no later than November 22nd. Okay, November 22nd. Now, as we're looking at that, if you have questions of what to include in that plan, or if you have questions about, have I included everything in there that I need to? Does this look okay? You can always reach out and we can look at that ahead of time or answer any questions you might have about that plan. But there is not a specific format that it has to be done in. That is not something that, again, all of you will have to do. It will be stated in your GAN if that's something that is required of you. Another grant condition you may see is an indirect cost rate condition, where you have to turn in updated indirect cost rate information, typically because your rate is currently expired. In that case, that information is going to be due by December 30th. So basically before the new year. You will just email that indirect cost rate information directly to Donna Bussell. Even if you don't have that as a grant condition, if you know that it needs to be updated because it's changed for you, go ahead and send that in as well. And then your year one budget revision is the one grant condition that's applicable to all 43 of you, okay? So every single grantee must complete a year one budget revision, and it's due November 17th. We're not going to get into a lot of information about that today, because tomorrow we're holding a budget workshop and we'll give you all the information, all the tools, all the forms that you need, and really dive into that tomorrow. Okay. Just double checking as we head into these last in case we have any questions. If you have any questions about this GAN information, pop those in the chat. Now, some other things that can be super helpful are to look at the legislation and regulations specific to your program. Those are available on the OIE website. Also, looking at EDGAR, the Federal Administrative Guidance. You can get to that through the link in this little presentation, as well as on the OIE website. We have it linked both places. And then also uniform guidance, those cost principles. There are questions every year, every month, every day about what is allowable expense-wise. Can I buy this? Can I spend my money on this? Can I do this? Most of those can be answered by checking the Uniform Guidance Cost Principles, the 2 CFR Part 200 Subpart E. We've got a link to that over in the chat, and then it's also linked on the OIE website, and we'll also talk a little bit more about this during the budget workshop. But always important, better to check and make sure that your expenses are allowable than to guess and be spending things inappropriately. And we'll talk a lot about that tomorrow during the budget pieces. Then the other thing to always have at the ready for your grant is your GAN. Always make sure that you have the most up-to-date version of that easily accessible. And then your approved application. Your approved application is basically your contract with the Department of Education, with OIE. You are bound to what you said you were going to do in that approved application. So it's really important that you have that and that you've read every single word of it. Take those sticky notes and tab it up. All right, a couple of other resources and then we'll take some questions. We also have some great ed training resources, particularly in regards to uniform guidance. So we'll pop that link in and also have it here in the deck for you. And that link to the uniform cost principles and the CFO.gov training modules. So particularly if you're new to federal grants or to the project director role, there are some really great trainings located on that CFO.gov that can help you get started on the right foot. All right, so let me check over here. I know I saw a couple of questions popping up. For the coordination plan, does this need to include our Title VI allocation, so your formula funds? And I'll let Donna kind of chime in, but I don't believe that you have to account for those. I believe it is just if you have multiple discretionary, OIE discretionary grants.
Yeah, if you have any other discretionary grant, such as another NYCP grant or an ACE grant, then that's what your coordination plan has to have, not Title VI. Title VI is not a discretionary grant program.
Great question. All right, normally the indirect rate is provided to us January to February timeframe for the next fiscal year. We normally update it on the report due during that quarter. Yeah, so if your rate is not expired as of yet, or that is not a grant condition for you, you don't need to turn anything in right now. Like I said, you'll check the GAN, and if it says that you have indirect cost rate information due, then you need to send it into Donna Bussell. Otherwise, you can just wait. And next time that it's updated for your organization, you can send in updated paperwork, but it's only required of those of you who have it as a grant condition. Let's see, I'm not seeing any other questions, any I've missed. Okay.
That's it.
Perfect, all right. Well, then we'll head over to another favorite topic, reporting. So you do have some required reporting as part of your NYCP grant. The most important of which, in the primary reporting that you do, is your annual performance report, which we typically refer to as your APR. They're usually due each spring, and we'll be getting you the exact due date for that quite soon. And this is your opportunity to share your most current performance and expenditure information. It's your opportunity to brag on your project and really highlight what you've been doing thus far. The way that the reporting year typically falls is that you're normally reporting on the first 6 months of the grant year, and then you have an opportunity in the fall to update that information as needed. In your APR, you report on a cover sheet that has some basic information you fill out, a 2-page executive summary where you get to really highlight everything going on in your project. You include a section A, which are all your performance measures, both your Government Performance Reporting Act or GPRA measures and your personal project objectives. You'll include a section B, which is your budget reporting. That's where you'll definitely need the assistance of typically your budget or fiscal office to help you be able to appropriately report on your expenditures and drawdowns. And then a section C, and that's where we ask you to provide some additional information, particularly around the different parts of your project that we look to compare across grantee. All of you will be reporting on Government Performance Reporting Act measures, which are your GPRA measures. These are defined by Ed in that notice inviting applicants that you responded to. They're reported on annually and they don't ever change. So all of you report on the same GEPRA measures all throughout the life of this project. For NYCP, we have two GEPRA measures. The first being the percentage of the annual measurable objectives as described in the application that are being met. Basically for this one, you look at all your other project objectives and then report on how many you met that year and how many you didn't. Pretty easy. And then the second being an increase in community collaboration. This is the significant increase in community collaboration efforts that promote college and careers of Indian children as measured by increases in the number of active community partnerships. So keep in mind that throughout the year, you're going to be tracking those community partnerships that you have as part of your grant. And we'll dive a bit more in some of our upcoming events about how to track that, what you'll be reporting on, and how you can prepare for that best. In addition to your GEPRA measures, you're going to be reporting on your project objectives that are specific to your individual project. These are taken directly from your grant application. So if you read through that grant application that was approved, somewhere in there, you defined your project measures. They're typically somewhere in that project narrative. If you had a logic model in there, you can typically find them in there. And they need to match with your primary grant components and outcomes. You're going to report on your unique project measures every year of your grant. And so you'll see as we work on your reporting over the next few months, we really will help you make sure that the way that your project measures are worded allow you to report on them across all 5 years of your project. A few tips, just as we're starting out and to kind of get you in the right mindset for reporting, is to start planning for data collection and analysis now. It's really easy to say, well, that's not due till the spring. I'll worry about that in the spring. And then that makes for a really hectic and frustrating reporting season for you, and often leads to you not doing the best reporting and shedding the best light on the great work going on in your community. You'll want to define and gather your baseline data now, and we'll actually work together to pull that together. Keep ongoing documentation of your performance reporting. If you're gathering that data little by little right now, it will be so much easier. Discuss the report due date with your authorized representative to ensure that you don't have trouble securing their signature on your report. So all of you will have to have your cover sheet signed by your authorized representative. That sometimes is the biggest hurdle to grantees getting their report in a timely manner, because you're trying to find that person and get them to sign it. So as soon as you know the report due date, get with that authorized rep and talk about, how can I make sure that you're available to sign this for me? And then also establish budget tracking and communication processes to ensure complete and current information for reporting. The second biggest hurdle that we hear from grantees is that they can't get the budget information they need for their report, or they can't get it in time for their report. So same thing, loop in your budget or fiscal office now. Let them know the types of things that you're going to need. Let them know when that report is going to be due so that there are no surprises. They can start planning as well, and you can have a stress-free reporting season this spring. All right, I see a couple of questions coming up over here. Okay, so Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're asking about the budget codes that you'll set up locally for your project. And yes, you set those up locally. You can use whatever budget codes you would like. However, the only thing is it does need to be set up in accordance with your approved grant budget. So you'll do that budget revision that's due November 17th, and that will kind of set up for you what should be in each cost category. But as far as what the unique budget codes are that you'll use, you can set that up locally. And I hope, like I said, I hope that answered that question. But if you have more to it, just let me know. Any other questions on reporting or budget pieces thus far?
Sarah, I wanted to just kind of, Sharon mentioned something earlier about her indirect cost rate. And just to reiterate that we can't give you indirect cost money if you have an expired rate. And even though you may have one that's, for example, I think Sharon was saying it was due to renew January for the next fiscal year. Anytime you get that, that's fine, as long as the indirect cost rate agreement that you give us now is current, or it has something in there that's showing the date, the time frame, because it can't be claimed unless there's a valid current rate agreement on file. Just wanted to clarify that a bit.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, because that is something that comes up, that you may have a line item in your budget for indirect costs, but you're not going to be able to actually claim it and draw down those funds if your rate is expired. So it's vital to ensure that you always have an unexpired rate and that OIE has that documentation, because that's the second piece, that even if it's not expired, if you haven't turned in that paperwork, if the paperwork that's with OIE is expired, then for all intents and purposes, it's expired. So always keep that up to date. And then I see we have a question over in the chat. We're totally new to this. Do funds for public schools normally flow through state public education department? In our instance, in New Mexico, through the New Mexico Public Education Department. And that's a great question, because there are certain grants that do work that way. This is not one of them. These funds will go directly to the grantee. So whoever the official grantee is, that is who will have access to those funds and will draw them down directly through the G5 system. So for instance, I know one of the grantees is Salish Kootenai College. So the money will go directly to them and they will draw those funds down through their fiscal office. They will not have to go through the Montana Department of Ed. And then let's see, we're a BIE funded school and our fiscal year is from July through June, which is super common. Most school districts run that way. BIE usually sends our new indirect rates in July. How would that work out? So in that instance, then it sounds like your rate is fine through June 30. If your rates run July 1 to June 30, and then they send you a new rate in July, as soon as you get that, you just send that in to Donna. So all of you may be on different fiscal years, because most of the time schools are going to run on a July 1 to June 30 fiscal year. Your grant runs on an October 1 to September 30 fiscal year. If you're part of maybe a nonprofit, sometimes those will run on a January 1 to December 31 fiscal year. So you may all be on different fiscal years. The important part is whatever fiscal year you're on, just keeping that paperwork up to date with the department. All right, any other questions? Okay. So let's jump over to grant reporting in G5. So G5 is your online reporting portal. This is where you're going to be able to find that GAN that we talked about earlier. That's where important notifications from Donna as your program officer to you will appear. She'll send those to you via G5. And this is where you will do your annual performance reporting. So it's very important that all the project directors have access to G5 and that it's current, up-to-date access. You can get in right now. You'll also want to log in and make sure that this grant award is showing up for you. If you are not the project director, you're not going to be able to access this grant in G5. You may have a G5 account, but you're not going to be able to do reporting for this project in G5 unless you're the project director. So that question often comes up with people saying, well, oh, but I'm going to be the one doing the reporting. We'll talk about some ways coming up in a future events about how you can work on reporting as a team and really make that a team effort. But the only person that will actually have access to your reporting in G5 is your project director of record. Now, the other thing is we'll talk tomorrow about how more people could have access to view-only access of the budget, but for reporting, only your project director will have that access. So this is what the landing page looks like. Olani has posted over in the chat a link directly to G5. In order to sign in, your username is going to be your email address, and you'll be able to set your own password. It does require two-factor authentication, which means that you're either going to have to download an app onto your smartphone and use that to log in, or it'll send you a text message with a code, and then you put that code into the system, or it will call you, tell you a code, and you'll put that code in. But it is going to require that for your sign-in. Once you're in the G5 system, and this is important, use the G5 menu buttons. If you use your internet browser buttons, it will kick you out of G5, and then you have to go through that whole rigmarole to get back in. And you will eventually become very frustrated. And I don't want you to throw your computer out the window. So try to remember that when you're in G5, just use the G5 menu, because the minute you hit one of those other buttons, it kicks you out and you'll not be a happy camper. If you are not the project director and you would like view-only access to the budget, or if you are the project director and would like view-only access to the budget, there is a way to do that. You can use this form. This is the G5 Payee Access Request form. You can complete this and then send it in via email to this edcaps.user@ed.gov email address, and it will let you see the budget info. You will not be able to do drawdowns. You will not be able to accidentally access any money, so you don't have to worry about that part, but you will be able to see it. And it can be super helpful because you'll be able to see every time a drawdown was done and for how much. Because ultimately, while the fiscal office may be the one that's actually going through the process of drawing down the funds, you as the project director are the one ultimately responsible for the budget and responsible for always knowing what's going on with it. So having this view-only access can be super helpful for that. Continuing on, kind of thinking about fiscal management, just a few kind of tips and tidbits. So when you think about contracting, many of you have a line item for various contractors in your budget. Remember that any of these contracting agreements have to be conducted in a manner providing full and open competition and consistent with the standards as set forth under uniform grant guidance. So you can see that under those cost principles, but basically most of your organizations have procurement policies already in place, and as long as you're following those, you should be fine. Also, you'll notice this is a big one. In approving your application, Ed has not approved any specific entities or individuals that you may have identified in your application as an evaluator, service provider, or other potential contractor. You must select all contractors in accordance with the requirements above. So just because in your grant you wrote, oh, we're going to use Sally as our evaluator, that doesn't mean that you are bound to only using Sally as your evaluator. You may go out for competition and determine that there is a better option for your evaluator. And so you may select someone else in accordance with your procurement policies. You were just allocated that amount of money for evaluation services, not for that specific human or that specific organization. Same thing for if you were going to contract with someone to do SAT prep activities. Just because you said in there that you were going to contract with this organization to do that, if you then later determine that in accordance with your procurement policies, you're now going to go with a different organization, that line item was just for this amount for SAT prep. It was not for that amount for that individual or organization. So that can be really helpful here. The other part on contracting is, to the greatest extent feasible, you must give Indian preference for training and employment in connection with the administration of the grant, and give to Indian organizations and to Indian-owned economic enterprises, as defined in Section 3 of the Indian Financing Act of 1974, preference in the award of contracts in connection with the administration of the grant. And you can find more information on all of this contracting stuff under that uniform grant guidance piece. And Alani will pop that link over in the chat. All right, let's see. Who do I contact if I'm the PD, but the system is showing that I'm not currently associated to any awards? So first step, reach out to the G5 help desk. and we can pop that information up for you again. But sometimes it's simply a glitch in the system, and when you reach out to them, they can fix it for you pretty quickly. My suggestion would be use the 800 number. I usually find that that's the fastest way to get it fixed. But yeah, just call, let them know. If for some reason they say, we don't see you as the project director or something like that, then you would reach out to your program officer, Donna Bussell, to make sure that you are the program officer of record in there. I can tell you, Amy, I think the dilemma on yours is that there was a typo in your application on your email address. Because I know when I sent you the calendar invite, it bounced back and I looked up your correct email address. They had your first name misspelled in your email. So I have a feeling when you contact G5, it's just going to be a matter of they need to fix your email address. Joy, I see your question. Does the project director sign the form to submit for view only? No. Let me go back to that form right quick. Here you go. So you'll see you are going to put your information on here, but it normally needs to be signed by your authorized representative. So the same person that would sign your APR is normally the one who has to sign it. It's actually a 2-page form. So you'll see this payee user signature, that's you. And then on the second page is where your authorized rep will sign it.
Sarah, there's also a question about for the annual report, does the grant director certify or does a superintendent certify?
So the project director cannot certify. It has to be certified by your official authorized rep. And so it's who we have on record as your authorized rep. That's typically going to be like your superintendent, executive director, tribal chairperson. If you're not sure who it is, you should be able to see that on your GAN, but also you can just shoot us an email and we can double check it for you too, to make sure that who you think it is who we think it is. Can you review box 5 of GAN and the level of effort? I think ours might be incorrect. Absolutely. So let me slide back to block 5. Oh, or for some reason, this slide deck loves block 8. Here we go. Here is block 5. So yeah, you should see your first name and last name, that you're the project director, and then level of effort. Now, this is just an example. You can have whatever level of effort you've decided. It should match with your budget. But other than that, if it's incorrect, again, just send that info via email to Donna Bussell and you can get that corrected. Is the GAN in the G5 system once we get in? Yes. Yeah, so once you log into G5, you should be able to then access and pull down your GAN. If it's your first time going into G5 though, and you have trouble navigating and finding anything, send us an email and we can walk you through, whether that's via email or we can even hop on a Zoom like this and do a share screen and kind of help you see where everything is. But it's typically under that first menu item that you're able to pull down your GAN. And my suggestion is just find it and print it so that you don't have to go into G5 every time you want to look at it. All right, great questions. I think I've gone through all of them, but keep popping them in. We also have a few resources regarding your indirect cost rates. I'm not going to read these to you, just know that we have a lot of them available. We will share again all of these so that if you have questions about your indirect cost rate or figuring that out. The other great resource is the Department of Ed actually has an indirect cost division. And the head of that division is Andre Hilton. That's his email address and phone number. So if you have specific questions about indirect cost rate, it's often easiest just to reach out to them because they are the experts. So if your rate is expired and you can't seem to get it updated, if you're not sure how to figure out your indirect cost rate or which one you're able to use, they're great resources and can really help you walk through all of that. All right. We're going to then go into our last chunk of information, which is on communications and technical assistance. So there's kind of two different chunks of communication. Official communication with the Office of Indian Education is typically through your program officer, Donna Bussell. Any official communication with OIE is only with your project director and authorized representative. So if they get an email from anyone else on your team, they are not able to respond to that, or they're going to respond to you and say, you need to include your project director. Okay. So that's why it's so important to keep OIE informed of those changes. Now, we also have your OIE technical assistance team. That's myself, Olani, Patty, a number of other individuals. You can reach us at oie@seiservices.com. And we always aim to respond to those emails at least within 24 hours, but often we're able to respond even faster. We as the TA team can communicate with your entire project team because we are not the official communication. But that also means that if you need something approved, I can't approve it for you. I can give you guidance. I can give you feedback as far as, oh no, check out the cost principles. You can see that's not an allowable expense. Or, oh, that one might be, but you're going to need to give this type of justification or use this form, or here's what you should submit to Donna. But if it's something like that needs approval, just know the TA team doesn't provide approval. We provide guidance, we provide support, we provide brainstorming, we provide resources, but we do not do approvals. All of that official communication is with your program officer. So like if you want to know if your budget revision is approved, I'm happy to help you work on your budget revision, provide feedback on it, but the actual approval comes from Donna. If you want to make changes to your program activities, or if you want to make changes to who your project director is, I can help you figure out how to do it. I can give you lots of support, but Donna does that approval. So that's kind of the biggest difference between the two communication avenues. But by that, it can be really handy to have more than just your project director on our OIE TA distribution list. So like when I send out calendar invites to the technical assistance events, when I send out reminders about things coming up, when I send out the OIE newsletter, I send that to everybody on our OIE TA email distribution list. Well, right now, you're all new grantees, so I only have each of your project directors on that list. So if you want other people from your team to be included in any of those communications, you have to let me know. You have a couple of ways to do this. One, when you registered for this webinar, there was a little box where you could put that info in. If you did it there, you're set. I'm going to go through and add all those folks. If you didn't, the easiest way, and I say the easiest for me would be if you would send me an email to oie@seiservices.com, and I'll put it in the chat there for easy copying, just because then I can input those people and send you an email back that they're done, and then you and I both know it happened. You can also put it in the chat. It's just a little more challenging because I have to go through all the chat messages, but you're welcome to put it there too, and I will do that. But you can add those folks any which way. The other is, some of you are going to be doing some hiring. You may have some staff positions that were specific to your grant project, and so you're going to be bringing some new people onto your team. So know that you can add people to that email distribution list at any point in the year. So as you get new team members in, just shoot us an email with their contact info and we'll add them to the list. All we need in that email is your grantee name, so we know who to associate it with, and then their name, their role, and their email address. And then we'll get them added into that distribution list so they're getting all the information as well. So that's my spiel about please add your team to the email distribution list. And the other great tip over here from Alani in the chat box is include your fiscal staff. So think about it this way, in that I'm going to send them the same communications you're getting, like reminders about budget revisions or reminders about annual performance reporting, calendar invites. They don't have to come to any of those things, but at least they're aware. At least they have the option. Okay? Just because I send out a calendar invite to 10 people on your team doesn't mean all 10 are going to attend, but at least they have the information and the option. Okay. Including your fiscal team though, and all of that can be super helpful in just making sure everybody's on the same page. Okay, someone is asking for the view only access form. I will email it out with the slide deck, and also at the end of the webinar, I'll pull it up. I just don't want to take the time to pull it up right this minute, just because we have a couple more slides to get through. But at the end of the time today, I'll pull it up, but I'll also send it out with the slide deck afterwards, so you all have that form and you don't have to go hunting for it, because it is a little hard to find on the G5 website. My fiscal team's all out of state tomorrow. Tell them to come back. No. Will a recording be available? Yes. You'll find that we record all of these webinars. The only thing we don't record is our monthly office hours, because we keep that really casual and want everyone to feel super open during that time. Not that we don't during the others, but we do record all of these and post them up. So yes, you can have them watch it Netflix style when they get back in state. All right. I think I ran through the questions, but we'll keep it coming. The next tip on communications is OIE has around 200 different discretionary grantees. So if you just send in an email and nowhere in there does it tell us who you are, it can slow down our response, whether it be from the TA team or your program officer. Because then we have to look and try to figure out, what grant program are you emailing about? What grant are you emailing about? What grantee are you? And so we have to spend all that time before we can even get to your question. So much easier if you could pop in who you are into the subject line. So by that, I mean, just pop in NYCP PR number, whatever it is, and then whatever you're emailing about, your normal subject line. That is immensely helpful. You can also include it in the actual content of your email. So a lot of times, like in your signature or something, your grantee name, and it just, like I said, it'll get you a response faster, because all of the OIE program officers are managing multiple grant programs. And then the TA team, we work with all the discretionary grants. And so it can become a little confusing, just making sure that we're responding to you about the right thing. So I've alluded to this repeatedly, but just making sure all of you, if you got an email invite to this webinar, you should have gotten an email invite to tomorrow's, which is our budget revision workshop. Super, super, super important that you attend. And again, include as many people from your team as you'd like. Get those fiscal staff in here, because your budget revision is due November 17th. And you want to make sure that you know how to do this. And hopefully we'll make it a nice, easy process. We've got lots of new tips and tricks. So even if you've been to one of these before, I have new things for you to try to make this as easy as possible, so that you can turn in that budget revision, get it approved quickly, and move on with the best part of your project, implementation. Yes, Diane, there are new templates with new bells and whistles. Always trying to zhuzh things up for you. So that will be tomorrow at 3 Eastern, which is 2 Central, 1 Mountain, high noon for our Pacific friends, and then 11 if you're in Alaska. If for some reason you did not get that calendar invite, just give me a heads up over in the chat and I will let you know. And yes, I can send them out prior to the meeting so that you can have those open and take a peek and be ready and raring to go during the actual workshop. Happy to. A couple of other things to be aware of. All of you are required to set aside travel funds for attendance for 2 people. This was in the notice inviting applications. And that is every year. So you'll see in your budget, that should have been allocated in your budget every year. However, I have a cost savings for you this year. The project director meeting is going to be virtual. So you can take those funds that were currently in your budget for that travel and move them elsewhere for this year. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have to attend the project director meeting. You do. The project director is required to attend the project director meeting. It's going to be June 6th through 8th, 2023, but it's going to be virtual. So you can attend it from the leisure of your office, couch, wherever you would like to attend from. But it won't involve any money because you won't have to travel anywhere. The nice thing is, because it's virtual, you'll actually be able to invite more people than we're normally able to accommodate when we do the in-person project director meeting. So we'll have more information for you as it gets closer, but that way you can go ahead and save the date on your calendar for June 6th to 8th and reallocate those funds as part of your budget revision. Now, I do have an idea of what you can do with those funds though, because the other save the date I have for you is for our Grant Leadership Academy. Friday, December 9th of this year, 2022, we're going to be holding a Grant Leadership Academy for all of the NYCP grantees, as well as our NOL grantees. And so you're all going to be getting together in person at the U.S. Department of Education in Washington, D.C. for a full day Grant Leadership Academy. And that will just be for your project director. But I wanted to make sure and give you that information so you can mark off that time on your calendar, as well as start looking at travel arrangements, because I know sometimes that can take a while to get through your fiscal office and to actually get made. Again, we're going to give you some more details on this, but just know it will be a full day event on Friday, December 9th in Washington, D.C. at the Department of Ed, and that it will be for the project directors. All right, so we've got, so yes, the project director meeting in June virtual, the Grant Leadership Academy in December in person, just to kind of clarify that one. And then I see, yeah, a couple other people asking about the new templates. Yes, I'm going to send it out to everybody. I won't just pick and choose. I'll give it to all of you. And is that mandatory? If we are already booked for that date, can we send our coordinator? So I'm going to throw that one to Donna Bussell.
For that question, I think we'll have to, I'll meet with Donna Sabus-Burns and we will come back with an answer to that very quickly.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to put a pin in that one and we will get back to all of you with that answer ASAP. Thank you. All right, then just a few other tidbits as we wrap up here. I have a couple of important reminders for you. Please make sure to check your grant terms, conditions, and grant award attachments for possible exceptions. So again, just download that GAN and really read through it. When in doubt, reach out to your program officer, Donna Bussell, or to our OIETA team. We are all here to help and support you. We want you to be successful and have a great 5-year project. And so anything we can do to help you, we are happy to do so. Because we all have to be responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. And so we want to make sure that we're dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and keeping everything in order on the kind of the paperwork side, so that again, you can spend the bulk of your time on the great part of your grant, implementing with the youth. So I'm going to pause here again. I think I've covered everybody's questions in the chat, but if you have any other questions, I'm actually going to change it so that you can unmute yourself, so you can pop it in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute and ask any questions you might have. While you're doing that, I am going to pop up our end of event poll in case anybody has to hop right at the webinar end time. If you don't mind taking a few seconds to respond to that poll, it's pretty quick and provides some really great feedback for us as we prepare upcoming events for you. And I'm going to give you a couple more important dates. So the budget revision workshop again tomorrow at 3 Eastern, 3 Eastern. Your first talking circle is October 20th, which is a Thursday, from 1:30 to 3 Eastern. You'll be getting a calendar invite for that later today. I didn't want to send them out and you'd be wondering, what are all these calendar invites? So just prepare yourself for a slight bombardment of your email with a bunch of calendar invites from me. And they'll all come from oie@sceiservices.com. And then we have our October office hours coming up on October 27th. If you're not familiar with what that is, so basically the fourth Thursday of each month, we have an office hours for an hour from 1 to 2 Eastern. It's a come and go event. So you can pop in straight up at 1, you can pop in at 1:55, anytime within there. And you can ask any questions you might have. All of the program officers attend as available. And then we always have the TA team on as well. And you can ask technical questions. You can ask, just brainstorm. We've had people come on and they're like, this activity isn't going as well as I had hoped. Does anybody have ideas? Or I want to do this, but I'm not sure how. So it can be any type of question you might have. You can ask it of the program officers, the TA team, your peers, the different groups that are on. It is open to all the discretionary grantees. So you'll see that there are people from other types of grants, which can be a nice networking opportunity as well. And with that little time each month, it is not recorded. So if you don't attend, just know that, it's not something we record and post. But we do have folks also that even if you don't have a question, you're welcome to join us. Some people really find benefit in just listening in, taking in that information. Maybe someone asked a question that you didn't know you had. So you're always welcome to be more of a fly in the wall during office hours as well. And then I see a question about, can you share the dates of the project director meeting? Yes, so that's the June 6th to 8th. And I'll go back to that one here, June 6th to 8th. And we'll send out a save the date calendar hold for that as well. And then your first talking stick is October 20th, and I'll send out the rest of those dates. And let's see, I think that's our last question over there for now, but I'll just make sure that you do have everybody's contact information. So here is the email address for your program officer, Donna Bussell, as well as for the discretionary group lead, Dr. Donna Sabus-Burns. And then also for our TA team, oie@seiservices.com. And then if you happen to be on Twitter, the Office of Indian Ed does have a Twitter. You can find that at OIE Indian Ed. We encourage everybody to follow along on Twitter. We post lots of things specific to OIE, but then also just general great resources that might be beneficial for your program and your community. So you've got all of that information. We have just a couple of minutes remaining in our time together. If you need to hop to another event, feel free, but if you have any remaining questions, we are happy to stay on and take any of those.
And Sarah, I did want to say, I sent out a Calendly invite. So make sure you look at those, schedule a one-on-one with me so we can go over any kind of questions or concerns you may have. We can go over your budgets and if you were cut or things like that. And there was one more thing.
Well, and if you're not familiar with Calendly, it's just a way that you'll be able to automatically book a little session with Donna Bussell.
I remember. I'm getting a lot of emails about the project director has changed since the like what Sarah said over the summer. Send me that information right away. Send me everything that Sarah went over in the slides and send me all of that information, the resume, the memo on the letterhead, the level of effort. Send all that to me as soon as you can, and I'm right there. And I will get that done as soon as I get all of that information. And please make sure it comes from, if you don't have a project director there, make sure it comes from your certifying official, also known as your authorized representative.
And then other Donna posted a great reminder over in the chat that, scheduling that appointment with Donna Bussell through Calendly is not optional. It is mandatory that you set up a post-award conference with your program officer. So if you look at that Calendly and you're like, out of these 9 million times that Donna Bussell has put out there, none of them work for me, then shoot her an email so that you can work something out, because that is something that everyone is required to take part in. All right, any other questions? I've put up on the screen that info that you need for your project director changes. And I'll also pop back just to the general contact info. Okay, great question, Milo. In our application, we budgeted for a 3-year grant. It sounds like this is for 5 years. Will we have to extend the applied for funds for the duration of the grant? No, so with the NYCP grants, you could apply for up to 5 years. And while the majority of grantees applied for 5 years, we do have some of you that applied for 1 year or 3 years. So however many years you were awarded will show in your GAN. And that is the number of years that you will have funding, and it'll tell you how much you have for each of those years. And so like for yours in particular, you applied for 3 years and were awarded for 3 years. So your project will just go for those 3. Yeah, great question. And thank you, Diane. Yeah, I'll just reiterate, we absolutely are here to help. Please reach out with any questions that you have. We look forward to getting to know all of you a lot better over our next few events. And we'll see all of you tomorrow for a great budget revision workshop.